All right, my name is Chris Campbell. I'm a practicing CPA, and I work with small and mid-sized businesses and individuals to help them pay the least amount of taxes possible by keeping them out of jail. So today I wanted to talk about tax resolution and specifically the offer in compromise. So for those of you who are not familiar with offer and compromise, it's basically a request for a settlement plan. So you owe quite a bit in taxes and usually for spanning multiple years, and it just builds up and it builds up. And meanwhile, interest and penalties are accumulating, and you get to the point where you're looking at the bill and you're like, I really don't see a way that I can pay it. So in order for avoid being on the hook for the whole thing, you ask the IRS to say, hey, look, you're going to offer to make a settlement deal, which is called an offer and compromise. But again, it's a sense of letting the IRS know, hey, look, I don't really have the means to pay this. Let's work out a deal where I pay a portion of the tax bill and wipe out the rest. So that's essentially what an offer and compromise is. And so I have a number of people that approach me and want to get that done. They've ran up some tax bills and now they're looking at it where they don't see a way out as far as being able to pay the bill in full. So I've walked through a number of my clients to do offer and compromises. Now, when you are doing an offer and compromise, one of the mistakes, and I guess the points that I wanted to make about doing this, not necessarily about how to do it, why to do it, it's the timing of doing it. And what tends to happen at times when people approach me about doing the offer and compromise, they normally don't have a lot of money at the time, right? And I guess that it makes sense because if you had the money to pay, you wouldn't be asking for a settlement plan. You just go and pay the taxes. So chances are your ability to pay cash flow at the time is not the best. And I've had a number of conversations where we go through the process and I tell them about the process. And it can be a pretty extensive process as far as everything that we need to gather and get together. So it can be a costly process, right? It takes a bit of time on our end. So obviously with the time comes the bill, right? That we need to get paid for doing it. And the reason why I'm bringing this up is that I run across a number of clients that make the mistake of, well, look, we go through the process and we say, hey, look, I don't have the money to take care of this right now. I'm going to wait till I get some money and then I'll come back to you and then start the process. And that is probably one of the biggest mistakes that I run into with a number of clients, because many times people that are in this situation, they're either business owners or contractors, and common theme is that they might have had a couple of great years where they wound up having to pay, they had to pay taxes on those years, but then when it's time to pay the taxes, they're not making the same money that they were during the time that they earned that income. So they might have had a spike in income or had a pretty good run, and then things died down. So you had a good number of businesses that exploded during COVID, still had to pay taxes on that money, but you might have delayed paying those taxes for whatever reason. And now businesses simmer down, right? Now businesses are a little bit back to what normal levels may be. And you may not necessarily have the cash flow at this point to cover the bill as you normally would. But the point being is that I talk to clients and they say, well, look, I don't have the cash now to get this taken care of. I'm going to make some money and then I'll go ahead and get this done, right? Because you're looking at not only obviously the bill that you would have to pay to get the service done. When you do request a settlement plan or offer a compromise, you do have to leave a deposit or a down payment. So if you're choosing the shorter term payment plan, because there are options where you can pay it over, say, 5 months. And if you choose that payment plan, you have to put down 20% of your settlement offer. So for example, if you had a $100,000 tax bill and you're proposing to pay, say, 50, you have to send them 10 grand at 20%. So you may say, look, I don't really have that at this time. I'll wait until I get it and then I'll make the offer. Now, the biggest mistake, getting back to why this is a big mistake, is because the offer and compromise or your settlement proposal, the IRS doesn't have to accept it, and they accept it on a case-by-case basis. So just because you go ahead and you file and you ask for it, that does not mean that you're going to get it. and they make a decision based upon your financial state and your ability to pay. And I always tell my clients it's always best to make the attempt to file the offer when you're not making money. Because when you put this offer in, they look at your financial situation in its totality. So you have to submit all of your assets, you have to submit your liabilities, you have to list bank accounts, you have to list retirement accounts, and then you also have to list your income at the time. So you look a lot more attractive to get an acceptance on an offer if you're not making money. If you wait until you're making money to pay all these things, well, guess what? You also have to report your income situation at the time. So if you wait until you're actually making more money, you're actually letting the IRS know, oh, okay, now I have more ability to pay the bill. So that's how it can ultimately hurt you, where it can lead to it not being accepted, or keep in mind, your income at the time is factored into the formula of your offer. So the way that an offer of compromise is created, your offer to pay the settlement amount is based upon a formula. So you can't decide, there's a formula that they decide what they feel as though you can pay. So if you walk through that formula and try to offer less, then they more than likely won't accept it. So that formula is based upon your assets at the time and your income at the time. So if you're waiting for your income to increase, that formula for what you can pay back actually becomes higher than what it would have been had you put that same offer in when you weren't making as much money or even necessarily losing money. So it can hurt you in a couple of ways by trying to wait until you get into a better financial situation where either A, you increase the amount that you may have to pay it off, and then B, you're presenting yourself in a stronger position to actually pay the amount in full, so it actually weakens your case as to why the IRS should accept your offer. Because keep in mind, the acceptance rate for these are not that high. I don't know the exact percent, but it's less than 50%. So you do have a less than a 50-50 shot of even getting it accepted. So one thing I always tell my clients is I always try to look to see if they're a good candidate for it, because I've been approached by clients that said, hey, look, I read about this offer compromise, let's do it. But I take a look at their situation and I let them know, look, there's a strong chance this is not going to make it. And then keep in mind, you pay to get the service done, you pay to make the deposit. And if they reject your offer, obviously you're out what it costs you to get it done. Now you've paid towards that balance and you're still on the hook for the full thing. I guess at bare minimum, it's good that you do get credit, right? They'll take the money and they'll credit it towards your balance. So it's not lost, so to speak, but whatever it is that you paid to do it, obviously that becomes a lost cause. So anytime I talk to somebody about it, I really want to do my best to see if they're a good candidate for it. And no one really knows the magic formula. Like, they don't publish that formula. So you can't say with precision that it's going to be a yes or no. But I think you can get a good idea is that, okay, well, based upon the assets, and then also take that formula into account where they tally up your assets, they do a portion of what you're making in your income at the time. And I think that gauges the ability to pay. So keep in mind, when they say your assets, they're taking into account retirement accounts and everything as well. So they have no issues with you cleaning out your retirement accounts to pay tax bills. So keep that part in mind. So the takeaway from it is that if you're considering an offer and compromise, do it. And it can be difficult, right? Because you got to find the money from somewhere, but do it when you're not making money or you're at your lowest point. At that point, you are the most attractive taxpayer to the IRS at that point to get everything waived. You wait until things turn around or you're in your business and things start doing well. At that point, the IRS does say, hey, now you have the ability to pay. So your likelihood decreases of them accepting that offer. And then also keep in mind that when you do an offer and compromise and you make that submission, you probably won't hear back from them at a minimum of 8 months. It might even be a year. So they may ask to reevaluate your situation again. So if you feel like, hey, if things are down and it's going to take you a while to build back up, you can submit the application now. And maybe while you're still building back up, they may ask you for additional financials and see where you're at. So it's not as if you're going to get an answer in 30 days of taking the submission. So that's another thing to keep in mind. as well. That they take a very long time to process before you hear back. So that's the takeaway. Muster up the money and do an offer on compromise while your income's quite low. So increases your chances. All right. So hopefully this was helpful. That's all for now. And yeah, if you have any more questions about this topic or any other tax or account related questions, feel free to reach out. I'm happy to help. All right. That's all for now. And I'll talk to you on the next one. Take care.